Okay, hi everyone. Good afternoon here from Washington, D.C. Huge apologies about that, actually, for the late start. We're having some technical issues in getting one of our presenters to have access to her microphone. But again, welcome and thank you for your patience. I'm Adrienne Sadella, the Knowledge Management Coordinator of the TOPS program with Core Group, and welcome to the May meeting of the Care Groups Forward Interest Group of the FSM Network. Today, we're having several presentations and updates and announcements from our interest group co-chairs. And before I turn it over to Mary DeCosta, who's the Senior SBC Specialist with the TOPS program with Food for the Hungry, I want to do a little bit of a housekeeping spiel. So today there are several parts of the meeting that I will be giving all the attendees microphone rights. One, after the presentation of the map with IMC, I'll be giving microphone rights to everyone for Q&A, and then also during Bonnie Kittle's activity after the map presentation. And then I will, once I give the microphone rights, I'll go over the instructions on how to turn on your mics and even raise your hand then. In the meantime, if you have any questions at all throughout the presentation, throughout the meeting, or any questions about sound and audio, please go ahead and type that into the chat box, and we're throughout the meeting, and we'll try to get to it. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Mary to go over today's agenda. Mary?
So what we're trying to do is get Sibby and Augustus from Sierra Leone's microphone working. It worked perfectly yesterday during our practice session. So of course now it doesn't work. Our backup is, we have a backup presenter for them in case that can't be worked out. Then Bonnie would lead an activity, but we're going to go out of order and skip all the way to the end. And I will share with you first about the resource, Care Group Essentials, a reference guide for practitioners. I'll go over the end of the meeting first, and then hopefully we'll have things working by then, or if not, we'll go with our backup plan. So sorry about the delay. We had a wonderful rehearsal that's maybe not a good sign. Probably better when you have a bad rehearsal. The audio pretty good for you guys? Type something into the chat box to let me know if you can hear well. Okay, so I wanted to tell you about this. This is pretty exciting. A small tool coming out. It's called Care Group Essentials, a reference guide for practitioners. And I got this idea. I was visiting, actually, Jen Weiss had developed this cool tool for the care groups she works with in Malawi with Concern International. And she developed a little abridged guide from the care group training manual for her team to use. And I thought, oh, that would be so great. So then she was on maternity leave here in the U.S. and looking for Concern worldwide. Sorry, thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, I sometimes make a hash of people's organizational names. Anyway, so she was on maternity leave, and so I got her to make us one. Anyway, the idea is that it'll serve as a nice companion to the care group training manual, but without all of the training pieces in it, not the activities and but just the kind of boiled down. and it might be handy for people that don't have time to go through a longer training or a longer manual. So could be also useful for program people, evaluators, and so forth. And it looks like it's going to be about 20 pages long. We would love it if some of you have photos to send me. If you had a photo for the cover, that would be awesome, because we're going to have a slightly different look from the manual that it's a companion to. So anyway, I put my email there in the chat box. Please send me if you have a wonderful photo. So this slide didn't come out well at all. I was going to show you a little section from the reference guide, but never mind. Oh, I missed that. And just wanted to share a couple of quick updates and announcements. So most of you know that Bonnie is leading a workshop at Core Group Spring Meeting on the pre-conference day, social and behavior change approaches during the transition from release to development. And we're really looking forward to that. So if you can come, if you're coming to Core Group and you have a chance to come to that pre-conference day, look forward to seeing you there. And then Care Groups Forward now finally has an actual listserv. It had been living before as a contact list in my email, so nobody else could really send email out, but now it's real. And Kim Buttonow, who is new on the top Food for the Hungry SBC team, she'll be moderating the listserv, so she can kind of weed out the spam, hopefully. But if you have something that you want to share with other care groupies, please do. And also don't forget about the discussion board also on the FSN network. Yeah, hi, Kim. So, Adrienne, why don't you come on and tell us what we're going to do next? Is Sibby going to be able to present, or should Bonnie pinch hit for her? Adrienne? Okay, so we'll start with Bonnie.
Let's go ahead and.
So Bonnie has been involved with this project as a consultant, so she's really interested in it and so forth. So she was a good, natural choice for a backup. Jen Burns also was interested in being available, but I think she's traveling and can't make it. So Bonnie, if you're ready, I'm going to mute and you can take it away. You go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me now?
Loud and clear, Bonnie.
Excellent. Very good. Well, the background to the reason why I can say anything about these slides is because IMC asked me to provide some ongoing technical assistance to a couple of specific projects on social and behavior change issues. And one of the projects was the SNAP project, of which the Men Are Partners is a part of that. And what you see here is the beginning of this presentation, and Sibby George is the SO1 team leader, and she was the one supposed to make this presentation today. And Augustus Davies, mentioned here on this slide, is the person in charge specifically of the Men Are Partners part of the project. So we can go to the next slide. So this project started out and had a care group approach in the very traditional way that it normally is, and it was seeking to reduce food insecurity and increase resilience among vulnerable rural populations in targeted districts, as it says here. And they were implementing this care group approach like we normally would do it in order to reduce chronic malnutrition amongst children under 2. Next one. SO2, enhance livelihoods for vulnerable people, especially women and youth, and to integrate those two elements of the project. And after several years of implementing the women's care group like we normally did, they thought they wanted to integrate men into it. So here we're going to see a slide about where the project is being implemented. And you can see from this map, let's get the map up here.
If you'd like to be able to control this.
That it's
Can you hear me?
primarily in the north. I can hear you, Mary. Go ahead.
You could
Oh, go ahead.
slides
She is
yourself.
on. Can she talk?
You could operate the slides by hitting those little arrows at the bottom.
There's one over here. Okay.
You see those
Okay,
arrows?
thanks. Yeah.
That would help
can see that I didn't do a dry run with this yesterday.
It's okay. Let's be quiet for
Super.
a second to see
So
if
you can see from this
Bonnie,
slide.
one more thing. Let's see if Sibby is on.
Yep.
Sibby, try again.
Yeah, let's do that.
Try again, Sibby. Nope, we can't hear her. Okay, Bonnie, carry on. Sorry.
That's okay. You can see the area here on this map that the project is being implemented mostly in the northern and slightly middle sections of the country, but with these outlying areas to the east and to the west. So here we are going to be showing the objectives of the projects. These are going to seem very familiar to everybody who's implemented a similar kind of project. And so they're doing, as I said before, the typical care group approach. But they wanted to add the role of men in order to solidify and to support the women in carrying out the behaviors that are normally and communicated through the care groups. So this is how the Men Are Partners structure is laid out. So you have a district supervisor who's training lead fathers, and then the lead fathers are having their groups of fathers. So this is very similar to the way a care group approach would be laid out as well. So the project for the Men Are Partners approach had 4 modules similar to the modules that we would find in a care group approach. And this is when I actually came on board to support the project. And one of the things that I did was to go through the modules that they had been using for the women's groups and to tweak them to address what fathers should be doing. And so we went through each of these 4 modules, the breastfeeding, the complementary feeding, essential hygiene actions, and family planning, and incorporated we asked the question consistently, what is it that husbands or fathers should do? So that in these modules we now have the behaviors that fathers and husbands should do. So those were the 4 modules that the lead fathers were trained on. And we're going to be showing what the key behaviors are. So here they are. Husbands tell clinic staff that he wants the baby to be put to the breast within an hour of delivery, so immediate breastfeeding. Husbands ensure that their wives go to the clinic within the first 3 days after delivery and within 6 to 8 weeks of delivery to get vitamin A capsules, and also postnatal care. I never counted exactly how many behaviors there were, but for each module there are several. So of course here we see a husband who is accompanying his wife to the primary health care unit. Love these pictures that Sibby and Augustus found for us. They were wonderful. And it's really such a pity that she can't present. She'd be able to tell you a lot more than I'll be able to tell. And here's a man who is carrying the baby and walking with his wife as they go to the market. I love that picture too, Kim. They have some really wonderful pictures. These are some other behaviors that you will see in the modules as we modify them. Husbands tell family members that he wants his wife to take time off from chores so that she can breastfeed. Fathers ensure food ingredients are available in the household for complementary feeding. They even are hoping that fathers will help prepare food and help feed the baby. That's wonderful. And here we have a dad who's helping to take care of a baby so that the mom can do her chores. We might be shooting for the dad to do chores one time, but we're working toward that. Whoops. Not sure if I skipped a slide. So here we see a tippy tap, and the husband is holding the baby for a while so his wife can use the tippy tap. So the men are partners activities including training of the lead fathers in their particular group, and then meetings with the fathers groups. We wouldn't call those care groups at that point, actually. So the meetings with the lead fathers happen bi-weekly, and the meetings with the fathers group happen once a month. Joint lead father and lead mother sessions happen, so they get the lead fathers and the lead mothers together to discuss things, and then the fathers also do home visits. Here we have a picture of the district supervisor who is meeting with the lead fathers with their materials that they have, their pictures, and their modules. Okay. Oops. Let me go back to that one. Oops, I thought we were going backwards. Sorry, folks. Okay, here we go. Good. So here's a picture of the lead moms and the lead dads together. They also do community awareness raising in public places like mosques and churches and community radio spots, market days. They have support from the primary healthcare unit heads to the lead fathers, and they also do counseling on family planning. So here's, again, some of the tools that they use. I've also been supporting them a little bit on their M&E tools. Their M&E tools are always a challenge, as we all know. So the lead father has some data collection tools that are both in pictures, and they're very simple. And the lead fathers collect data on a biweekly basis and give that data to the district supervisor at the end of the month, who passes it on up. So here are some of the process indicators that the project is following with regard to the Men Are Partners component of the project. Mind you, both of the care group approach with the mothers are happening simultaneously with the Men Are Partners component. So here are some of the behaviors that we're expecting the fathers to be practicing and the indicators that they're following. So we're almost at the end of the project now, and here are some of the lessons learned that the project has come up with. So they feel very strongly that the involvement of men in the project has really contributed in helping to achieve the targets and expanding the coverage to more than just the mother in the family, but to also husbands and fathers, of course. And they believe that there's a lot stronger chance of behavior change with the support from the fathers and the husbands, and therefore future projects should be designed that increase the involvement of fathers and husbands. So, as a good project, they should be thinking beyond the end of when IMC will be there. So they're going to be providing certification to all the lead fathers so that it's known to everybody and they can show the certification that they've been trained in these 4 modules. And they're going to be giving a list of all the lead fathers to the Directorate of Food and Nutrition with the Ministry of Health for inclusion in the National Mother Support Group Initiative. They will be indicating who amongst the lead fathers were trained in this particular location so that they can perhaps serve as volunteers through that initiative in promoting health and nutrition, because at the Ministry of Health level, they're working on national policy for community volunteers. So I believe that that is our last slide. So I saw that there were some questions here. Adrian, do you want to monitor the questions? And Adrian, Sibby can maybe write the answers in the chat box. Is that the best way to handle that?
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you, Bonnie. Let me see. We have one question from Will Story up top. Will wants to know, how did you come up with the father-oriented behaviors? Were men involved in determining these key behaviors? So
I'm going to let Sibby respond to that if she's able to, and if not, I can add my 2 cents worth.
Okay. Sibby?
Writing. Write it into.
Oh, she's typing.
Yeah. While we're waiting, let's go back and look at some of those awesome pictures and just scroll back. I love these pictures. Sibby, her answer didn't make it into the chat box. She started typing and I don't see it now. Okay. She said, the women are okay with men accompanying them to the PHU to deliver. They discuss it during the joint LF and LM session. Does that fully answer the question from Will? Caterers, do women want to have men? Bonnie, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Let me answer Will's very first question because that's where I started to first get involved. So Will's first question here is how did we come up with the father-oriented behaviors, and were men involved in determining these key behaviors? Let me give you a little bit of background information. There was supposed to be a local NGO that was handling the men or partners component, and they had already had an approach that was very similar to what IMC ended up implementing, but for various reasons this partner, this local partner, had to drop out. And so we were kind of at the end and a little bit under pressure, as a lot of projects are. And so there was no participation of men in determining the behaviors. So that was a little bit unfortunate, and I think they might do it differently were they to have the time that they had originally anticipated. And so what I ended up doing was I was taking the modules that they were using for the care group approach with the care group moms and the neighbor moms, and we tried to develop behaviors that mirrored and supported the key behaviors that we knew the mothers were being encouraged to practice. And so you will see when you look at the list, when you see these, that these are all related to the behaviors that we want women to practice, either pregnant women or mothers. And we felt it was the, knowing what I know culturally about Sierra Leone, what would be an appropriate role for a father or a husband to play in support of the behaviors that we wanted the mothers or the pregnant women to practice. So that's essentially how those behaviors came about. So that answers the first question, I hope. Will, is that an okay answer? Does that answer your question? Super. So Sibby has written in our presenters chat box the answer to Julie's question. And Julie is asking, how do we measure the indicators that require observation? And Sibby has written that they do that during home visits. And I have to say that as far as I know, the development of the data collection tools has been a kind of recent thing, as they tend to be, unfortunately. And so I think this is very much a new and ongoing activity for the supervisors of the lead fathers, this observing them during home visits and checking and making sure that they're looking for the behaviors or asking about the behaviors and then filling out the data collection form that they have. So that's how that gets done, Julie. I'm trying to read Sibby's answers over here so that I can make sure to communicate them the way she's written. Okay. Okay, so there was another question. Let me see where that went. So Will is writing, many of the indicators are for men accompanying women. So Sibby has written in her box that for the most part, women are happy with the men who are either their partners or their husbands attending their deliveries. And it's something that doesn't happen kind of suddenly. It's something that they discuss ahead of time during the meetings with the leader mothers and the lead fathers, and also during home visits. So this isn't something that would be decided upon at the last minute. And presumably, if a wife did feel uncomfortable, I would assume that that would be talked through, and maybe an alternative role for the father would be devised. So maybe he might not be in the room when she delivers, but maybe he'll be at the facility and help bring things for her or help bring the baby home. So I can imagine that in the case where there might be an objection, that an alternative role for the father that was more acceptable would be a point of negotiation. But according to what Sibby's written here, there doesn't seem to be a problem with that right this minute, up till this moment. So keep in mind that this approach was put into operation only last October. So it hasn't been in operation for all that very long. It was last summer and fall that we finalized the modules and got the pictures that went with them, etc. But the actual implementation is only a couple of months long. So it's a fairly new approach. So Cindy is asking, how does the coordination between the other care groups and the same promoters? Okay, so as I said before, the modules that were taught to the fathers were basically the same modules that were taught to the care group volunteers, but with added information about what would be the father's role. So in every single module, there's actually a section, a new section that says, and what would the father or the husband do? What should the husband do? And accompanied with each one of these, what should they do, are pictures that show fathers doing the desired support behaviors that we're hoping for. So the discussion can be around, what do you see this father doing? How do you feel about that? Is that something that you can see yourself doing? What are the barriers that you might encounter while trying to do this behavior? And the discussion, as we do in care group meetings, and how would you overcome these barriers to doing this behavior? For example, if you know, if it was culturally unusual for a husband to be going with his wife to an antenatal consultation, and you think you might be criticized or laughed at for doing that, how would you handle that? So during those meetings, they would talk about, just like we do in the care group meetings, how do you overcome those barriers to doing the behaviors that we're promoting. Okay, yes, we have different modules. So I think that Sibby is writing in the presenter's note box. Is that true? Is that Sibby writing there? I will have to ask Jennifer Burns about sharing the materials. I would certainly advocate for that. I think I'm always on the side of sharing materials. So yeah, something that we need to talk with Jennifer Burns about in terms of posting them in a public place. Cindy, did I answer your question well enough? Okay, so how did the coordination between, oh yeah, I think we, you know, I actually, I'm not actually very sure how to answer the coordination question. It looks as though they met together, which I actually didn't know about until just now. So I'm not really sure, and I'm not really sure if the district supervisors supervise both. So hopefully Sibby can pitch in here. Okay. Okay, good. She's writing in that it happened even before the men or partners role came in. I'm not sure if everybody is allowed to see the presenter notes. Adrienne, is everybody being able to see that or not?
No, Bonnie. The presenters are the only ones.
Good.
Only ones that can see it.
Thanks for that. So I'm going to share that. So Sibby is saying that the coordination between the mother care groups and the mother or partners started even before the formalization of the role of men. And the reason that that happened was because this project has a food distribution component to it. And so men were pitching up at the places where the food distribution was happening to help out, you know, with all the logistics of that. And so that's a little bit of where the idea of, okay, these men are showing interest, they want to help with this aspect of the project, they're knowing about the care group activities that are happening, so let us move forward with formalizing their role in the project. And that's part of where the lead fathers initially came from that group that were already showing interest. And so there was a coordination between them already even before the modules were modified. Right, yeah, and there was, I'm seeing your question in your comment here, Cindy, about the cost of the materials, and there was an added cost, and that was a budgeted thing. They were going to be, that was going to be part of the partners' budget. It ended up staying with IMC. But it was less expensive because we used a large part of the modules that were developed for the care groups, and we just modified them slightly. So it wasn't like a total renovation of all of the modules. And many of the pictures that were used in the care group modules, they just had to be tweaked by placing a man in it and showing him doing the behavior that supported the behavior that the men were going to be doing. So I hope that answers that. Any other questions that I can help with? Super. Good. Do we want to go on to the activity that is going to follow if nobody else has any more questions? Adrienne, can you move it quickly over to my slide?
Yep. All right, I am gonna. There's a couple more. The map
So
presentation.
while we're waiting for my slide to pop up, which is the next one, we thought it would be really fun to get more practice with writing behavior statements that have to do with fathers or husbands. And so if everybody who's participating, we're 17 now, can grab a pen and a piece of paper, or a pencil and a piece of paper, we're going to do a joint activity that will help us to build skills. And the skill that we're trying to build is how to write behavior statements that focus on and have as the priority group the fathers or husbands, either one. And so I just wanted to do a quick review for people who are not so familiar with writing behavior statements. Many of you have been in the trainings that I've done, so this will be a review for you. So the behavior statement is divided into 3 parts. They're shown here. First, we're going to state who the priority group is, and the priority group is the person who should be practicing the behavior. It is one group of people who should do the behavior in order to solve a problem like malnutrition, for example. And the guidance that we want is that we want the priority group to be very specific. So if we're talking about fathers, then it might be fathers of children 0 to 6 months old. You can imagine where I'm going when I talk about that age group. And we're not going to be saying things like community members or households or parents or couples. We're going to be saying a very, very specific group. And we're not going to say mothers, but we're going to say mothers with babies of particular ages. Okay, so an example that we have there is mothers of children 6 to 8 months old. And then the second part of the behavior statement is an action verb in the present tense. And it needs to be not a verb like support or help or use, because those aren't clear enough. It needs to be action-oriented. Know and feel are not action verbs. And we should only have one verb, because if you use more than one verb, you're probably describing more than one behavior. The last part of a behavior statement are the details or the specific things that are going to make it powerful, that are going to make it solve the problem that you're addressing, such as malnutrition or morbidity, mortality. So an example would be the critical times to wash your hands, or the place you want the woman to give birth in, or the person who should do an antenatal consultation for it, or the frequency of the meals for a 9-month-old. So when you look at the very bottom of this screen here, you're going to see an example behavior that I just drew up. Mothers of children 6 to 8 months old, feed them, that's the verb, meals that contain foods from at least 4 of the 7 food groups every day, and then with an asterisk you're going to list what are those food groups according to what you use in your project or in the country where you are. So now what I'd like to invite you to do in your own space, where you are, wherever you're sitting, take your pen and your paper and try to write a behavior statement that has as the priority group some husband or father, realizing that you have to make it a little bit more specific than just husband or father in most cases. And then as you do that, please type in your behavior statement into the chat box, and we're going to copy them and we're going to paste them into the slide, and we're going to discuss them, and I'm going to give you some feedback on them, and we're going to be able to discuss them together, and you'll be able to ask me questions and I'll be able to give you a little bit of guidance. Does anybody have any questions about what the task is? So in my head, I'm imagining
So everyone,
all of you writing behavior statements.
give them a couple of minutes, Bonnie. But while you guys are writing your behavior statements, I'm going to go ahead and enable microphone rights for all. That means that when you'll be able to see a mic icon next to the audio icon on the top of your screen, and if you're ready to go ahead and tell us what your behavior statement is, just raise your hand, which is also an icon next to the mic icon, and then we'll point to you, and you can click on the mic icon to turn it green, and then you can use your mic. But then again, you can use the chat box to type your behavior statement. Yeah, that might be a little, let me do this. How does that look now? Can people see? Is that better?
So I'm going to wait to make any comments until we get a few more behaviors up here, and then we can post the behaviors and look at them together. And I'll just make a few comments, and if you have some questions, we can discuss. So good. We have some great examples here. Thanks, everybody. And everybody else can continue. Awesome. Very good. So let's post the first one. I think it was Tom's. And I think that Adrienne is going to cut it and great, paste it over there. So we have husbands, and I would say / partners of mothers of children 0 to 5 months of age take the lead on cooking at least one meal a day while the mother is exclusively breastfeeding. My recommendation on this would be to try to find a verb that would be clearer on than taking the lead. Taking the lead is a little bit vague to me. It's not real clear what that might be. So that would be just one comment to try to tighten that one up a little bit. So that's great. Any comments or questions on that particular one? We'll go on to another one. We try to find really, really tight verbs when we write these, partly because you want to not be, when you're monitoring it and trying to observe it, you want to be super clear about that. The one that Nicole posted is very interesting. Let's put that one up. That's a very fun one. The fathers of boys. Okay, in this one, and this is a very common thing that lots of folks do, they incorporate into the behavior statement, where they're actually working or where it is. That particular part doesn't need to be, if you're using the DBC framework, this is where I'm going, that part would come in the priority group column. So generally what we recommend when you're writing a behavior statement is that you would do targeted fathers or targeted husbands, and then when you get to the priority group column, then that's where you're going to say where they live and whether they're in an urban area or a rural area. This is also a very good example of the use of the word ensure. Usually we try to use very, very active words, but there's certain instances where you can use this terminology ensure when it's an adult making sure that some other younger person like a child does something. So this is a good example where the use of the word ensure would be a reasonable way to handle this. This is great. Good example of that. All right. Oh, I love Mary's. This is great. This is good challenging for me too. Okay. Fathers of newborns. So see, we have lots of categories of fathers. Fathers of newborns do all the cooking for the family for the first 6 weeks after the baby is born. I think we're shooting for a lot here, Mary, but this is a really good behavior statement. And this goes to show that you've included, and what I really love about this is where you've included the exact time frame. So if you had just left it as newborns, then the question would become, well, until when is a child a newborn? So I love that you put in for the first 6 weeks after the baby is born. Excellent. That's a good one. As I say, I think it's a bit maybe ambitious, but not bad, shooting for the moon. So let's see. Fathers of children take them to decision with their wives. Okay, let's post up Marion's again, and let's look at that one. Fathers of children and the ORS one. Fathers of children 0 to 5 years take a joint decision with their wives to buy ORS before in case their child has diarrhea. Okay, so we need to be super careful about the age range here because as far as I understand, if a child under 6 months old has diarrhea, it's not your first option to give the ORS. So I would recommend changing this age range here, 6 months to 5 years. Okay, so that would be one comment that I would make on this one. So the idea, if I'm understanding Marianne, is that you want them to stock the ORS, not just get it when their child has diarrhea. So if that's the case, then I might reword this to make that a little bit clearer. The other thing is that this particular behavior is getting at two kind of different things. One is the gender idea of joint decision making, and it's combining it with a behavior of having ORS packets on hand in case for administration in the case of diarrhea. So you might decide to divide those behaviors into two, but I love the overlap of that. I love the overlap of the gender issue and the ORS issue. So that's a very interesting challenge that we need to kind of figure out how to handle that. Great. All right, husbands of mothers of children issue. Let's post up Julie's that's sitting here, husbands of mothers of children under 2. Let's look at that one more carefully. I think it's very interesting that many of you are writing husbands of mothers. We could also do fathers of children under 2. That would probably sound a little bit better, make it a little bit clearer who it is, and also put much more accent on the fact that the father is or the husband is the priority group. So I might recommend that as we get used to writing these, it's just the father of the under 2 child. Feed other household children during meal times to allow the mother to eat. Okay, so here's one thing that we often do in behavior statements that's not necessary. You don't need to include in the behavior statement the why. You don't need to say so that so-and-so can do such and such, or to allow her to do such and such. So you just eliminate that part of the statement and just clarify this is what the person needs to do, not the why. The why comes up in other places and describes the reasoning behind it. There might be a little problem if there's lots of kids in that family that he would be in charge of all other children eating, but you'd have to work that through in terms of its practicalities. So Ulembe, who's actually here with me in South Africa in the training that I'm doing right now, has posted one. So let's put hers up and have a look. Okay. Fathers of children 0 to 6 months, bathe them every day. I love the simplicity and the directness of this. And it's a super clear behavior statement. And the age group is really wonderful. There's nothing really magical about bathing in this age group as there is with some other behaviors that are very, very age specific. So this actually could be expanded if you wanted to and make it bathe children, you know, from 0 to 5 months every day, or however often bathing a child would be culturally appropriate and feasible within that framework. So if we take this and dissect it, we have priority group, fathers of children 0 to 6 months. Bathe is the actual verb in active tense, and them obviously is referring to the children every day. So that's a very simple and straightforward behavior statement. So let's see. Will is there. Male partners of pregnant women create a list of potential blood donors. Oh, wow. Let's post Will's. This is super. My former co-chair. I love it. Male partners of pregnant women create a list of potential blood donors with contact information in case of obstetric emergency. Great. I love this. This is so specific and so very unusual. The comment that I made before about the why are you doing this could potentially apply here. You might change this around and include somehow in the statement, bring it with them to the maternity so that it's kind of included in the explanation of the behavior that it is for obstetric emergency. But this is a really great and very unusual behavior statement. Wonderful. And I love the use of the verb create. You could also use write. That would be wonderful. Very good. Cindy's fathers of children ensure that their child has a safe, clean place to play on. Good. Let's post Cindy's. Last one. So this one is related to this wonderful new field that we've been talking about recently and figuring out what we can do. So environmental enteropathy, about children playing on the ground in unsanitary circumstances where they're going to be consuming animal, but particularly chicken feces. So this is related to that particular problem. So we're putting the onus on fathers here to do something about that. So fathers of children 6 to 23 months ensure that their child has a safe, clean place to play on or sit on. So the words that I have issues with on this, Cindy, are the safe and the clean. Because what is safe and what is clean to one person will not be safe and clean to another person. So I would recommend to you to describe in a little bit more detail what exactly you see as clean, in particular clean. So what do you think? I'm going to challenge you here right in front of everybody. Well, let's challenge everybody. What other words might you put in there in this behavior statement that Cindy has written that would clarify that this is related to avoiding environmental enteropathy? So let's open it up to everybody else who's looking at this behavior statement that Cindy wrote. Fathers of children 6 to 23 months ensure their child has a clean place to play. No, Tom, it needs to be in the behavior statement. The reason it needs to be in the behavior statement is because from this behavior statement is where you're going to write your barrier analysis questionnaire. And so if it's not here, it's not going to come up in the BA questionnaire. So can anybody, this is a good challenge to the whole group. There you go. Place free from animal feces and pieces of leftover food. Great. That's a good suggestion, Julie. Awesome. Great. Yeah. Mary, that's a good one. Excellent. Animal or human. Great. Very good. And I actually, these are all great examples. We used that one last week. Exactly. And I actually worked with Ann on that one, so I was just going to tell everybody that we have a barrier analysis questionnaire that's great for this. So if anybody is interested in studying this, we now have it amongst our questionnaires that are available for folks to use. I love that we're branching out in the barrier analysis efforts to look at all these very unusual behaviors. I'd love to do one on the one that Will just wrote about husbands making lists of contact information. That would be wonderful. And a lot more groups are focusing on this environmental enteropathy and, you know, exactly how do we go about, you know, what's the best approach to keep children from playing where they could potentially ingest animal feces of any type, but particularly chicken feces. So. And that is very much tied into the second column, which is the priority group description, which describes kind of, and this is the discussion that Ann and I had going back and forth, you know, where do people generally put their kids to play and where generally are the children? So great. So what questions does anybody have for me before I chat on for another 30 minutes? Are there any other interesting behaviors that people are working on that involve fathers or husbands? Aha, everybody is feeling very confident about their behavior writing statement skills. That's great. I think the more that we begin to work on engaging men and husbands and fathers in the efforts that we're doing both in maternal and child health and food security projects, that the more we're going to, our skills in writing those behaviors and learning how to promote those behaviors and doing barrier analysis amongst husbands and men and fathers is going to become a lot more frequent and a lot more common. And I love that possibility. I think it's really going to be helpful to all of us when we can learn the perspective of husbands and fathers with regard to the behaviors that we're promoting that we think that mostly women should practice. So I think we can look forward to getting a lot more data about that. Happy to help you all. So unless anybody else has any questions, I'm done with my part, and I just want to thank you all for participating in this little activity. I think it's really important for us to, you know, continue to hone our skills on all of these different areas. And I encourage us all to share our lessons learned about how we are engaging men and learning how to help get men's support for a lot of the behaviors that we want, and to also open the door for husbands to be practicing these behaviors that we know will be very beneficial. So if anybody else needs any help from me in the future, you know that you can reach me, and I'll respond very quickly to your responses. So I look forward to hearing from you. And as I work with different groups to design barrier analysis questionnaires, I add them to my personal bank of questionnaires. So before you go off and start your own, be sure to contact me and ask me if I have a questionnaire on that topic already, and we can help you to expedite the process. And if you develop ones on interesting topics, please share them with us so that we can share them more widely with other folks. So thanks so very much, everybody. I really had a great time doing this.
That was really fun. I think others can join me in agreeing that that was a really useful and fun activity. Those of you that were here at the beginning of the session heard me talk about this draft tool, and also noticed up in the chat box I put up a couple of things you would like to see. The behavior bank is awesome. It shows people's results from a lot of barrier analysis studies they've done, and though you can't actually use them in your own project area, it really could inform your work unless you happen to be doing your project right in the very same context. And then there's also all those great barrier analysis questionnaires. So anyway, those of you that came late, I announced that we've got a new tool coming soon, a little reference guide for practitioners that's a companion to the care group training manual, and also announced that we have a real live listserv now finally. Does anybody else have any announcements? I'd also encourage you guys, oh, Tom's got an announcement, awesome. Adrian, can you open up the mic for Tom?
Yep, Tom should be able to turn on his mic.
Yes, can you hear me? It seems that you can hear me. I was working with a project down in Nicaragua this week, and we were talking about Zika virus and discussing whether there might be some interest in pulling together people to develop a short Zika care group module. So I don't know if other people are interested in that, or if anyone has started anything on that, especially in Spanish, of course. But I think this is the sort of thing we were looking in this one project area in Managua and realizing if we could really halt transmission of the virus in this area, it could prevent something like 600 children from getting brain damage. And it was a very, the latest stuff they're finding, it's not just that 1% who get microcephaly, but up to about 29% who have some sort of brain lesion. And that often you have a third to half of women who are pregnant getting infected. So it all happens at once. It's going to happen in the next year. So if we're going to do something on this, it would probably have to be pretty soon. But I thought I'd just gauge some of the interest.
And I think that would be a great one to send out to the listserv as well, because there'll be a lot of people who weren't on this call who might be interested in joining with you to form a little task force. And Bonnie has typed in, we first need to define the behaviors, don't we? That was one of my first questions to the Zika working group at CORE. So Bonnie, it sounds like you would be very much needed on that task force. Of course, Tom can help with that too. Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I really want to thank you all for your participation, and please do let us know if you have suggestions for future topics for the Care Groups Forward Interest Group when we meet again. And thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Sibby. So sorry that you had technical difficulties. And this will be available as a recording. Yeah, so Adrian, do you need to say anything to close us out?
Hi, yeah, so I'll just repeat what Mary said. Thank you again to everyone who stayed. Thank you for your patience. Even with the technical issues, you were able to follow through this meeting. Thank you to our presenters and our attendees. We will be following up with you with the recording, the PPT slides, and any more updates and announcements for this group. If you do want to join the listserv, the CGF listserv, you can access it on the link that I've provided below, and check us out. We'll be updating the web page, the CGF web page on the FSN Network website. Again, thank you so much, and hope you all have a good day, good night, wherever you are logging in from.